For many students, reading is the hardest subject to prepare for on the SAT. For math, you can learn the formulas. For writing, learn the grammar and punctuation rules. But what do you do for reading? Of course, the goal is to become a better reader, but what does it even mean to be a good reader? And how do you become one?
Mr. Greenberg! Mr. Greenberg!
What is it, student me?
Don't you just have to, read a lot?
Well, student me, yes and no. You see, it is true that students who read a lot tend to do much better on the reading portion of the SAT. However, if you're going to be taking the test next month or even a few months from now, you're probably not going to be able to read enough to dramatically improve your score in that time. Moreover, even students who do read regularly often struggle to do well on the reading part of the SAT. And this is because the reading you have to do for the SAT is very different than the kind of reading you do in school or for personal enjoyment. Therefore, it helps to have a different approach. So in this video, we are going to cover 6 simple hacks that can dramatically boost your score on the reading portion of the SAT. Hello, I'm Nathan Greenberg, founder of Ivy League Mentors, and I've been teaching SAT since before many of you were born. And today we're going to talk about reading strategies on the new digital SAT.
Mr. Greenberg!
Yes, student me?
My other teacher told me that I don't need to read the whole passage. Is that true?
Well, student me, the truth is that it depends. Sometimes you will need to read the whole passage, and sometimes you won't. Which brings us to hack number 1. Focus on the important parts.
But how do I know what's important?
Well, to answer that question, we need to move on to hack number 2. Read the question first. Now, this was not something I recommended on the traditional paper version of the SAT, because on that test, each passage had 10 or 11 questions. And frankly, I don't think it's possible to keep 10 or 11 questions in your mind as you're reading the passage and still be able to concentrate on what you're reading. However, on the new digital SAT, each passage has only one question, and the only reason you are reading the passage is to answer that question. So to get back to hack number 1, something is important if it helps you answer the question, and if it doesn't help you answer the question, it's not important. That's why you need to read the question first, so you know what to focus on when you're reading the passage. For example, if the question is asking you about the main idea of the passage, then you know you need to focus on finding the main idea. Or if the question is asking you about the function of a particular line, then you know you need to focus on the function of that particular line. Sometimes you will need to read and understand the whole passage to answer the question, and sometimes you won't. But the key is that you shouldn't just automatically try to read the whole passage and absorb it all, because you may be wasting your time. Rather, you should read strategically with the question in mind. To demonstrate how that works, let's try an example together. So as discussed, we'll begin by reading the question. Which choice best describes data from the table that support the researcher's claim? Now, from this question, it should be pretty clear that we don't necessarily need to understand the whole passage. Rather, we need to focus on information that tells us about the researcher's claim. And, skimming over the passage, I can be relatively certain that the sentence that's going to be most useful to us is the last sentence, because it begins, "Thus, they claim." So I would start by reading that sentence. Thus, they claim that 2 languages with very different spoken rates can nonetheless convey the same amount of information in a given time.
Great, so now that we know the claim, can we finally move on to the answers?
Not so fast. I think it's time for hack number 3. Answer the questions in your own words before looking at the answer choices.
But Mr. Greenberg, coming up with my own answers sounds much harder than just reading the answers that are already there.
Oh, student me, I know it may seem that way, but actually, coming up with your own answer first is a very important step. Because think about it. How will you recognize the correct answer among the answer choices if you don't first know what the correct answer is going to look like? And keep in mind that your prediction doesn't need to be perfect. A rough idea is enough. The point is to give yourself just a few seconds to think before automatically jumping to the answer choices. To avoid the temptation to look, you might even consider covering them up. Now let's get back to our example. In this case, I've covered up the answer choices for you. Now, as you will recall, the question was asking us for data from the table that would support the researcher's claim. And we've identified the key sentence. It's the last sentence, and it tells us that the claim is that two languages with very different spoken rates can nonetheless convey the same amount of information. So our correct answer is going to provide an example of two languages with different spoken rates, but with very similar amounts of information conveyed.
Okay, fine. So can we move on to the answers now?
Yes. Now that we've established that, we can move on to our answer choices and examine them one by one, crossing off anything that doesn't give us what we predicted, even if it's true according to the table. And if we do that, we will see pretty quickly that the only possible answer is B. Now, you might have gotten this question right anyways, but it probably would have taken you a lot more time, because instead of quickly spotting the correct answer, you would have had to look through each answer choice, perhaps checking it with the table to see if it was right. And keep in mind that many of the answers in this question are correct according to the table, so you might have picked one of those false answers anyway. That said, sometimes it may be difficult to spot the correct answer, even if you have taken a moment to think about what the answer should include first. So, let's move on to our next hack, hack number 4. Rather than focusing on what makes an answer right, think about what might make it wrong. Keep in mind that most wrong answer choices on the SAT reading will be at least partially right, because that's how they trick you. A lot of students are going fast and they'll see something that they like in part of an answer choice and they'll latch onto that answer and pick it without considering the other answer choices. But you can prevent yourself from making that mistake if you take the time to carefully examine each answer choice and look for possible flaws. And one little trick that may help you do that is breaking the answer choice into parts and trying to ensure that each part of the answer choice is correct. Because for the correct answer, every part of it will be correct. To demonstrate, let's take a look at a question that student me got wrong. Now, this question is asking us for the choice that best describes the function of the underlying sentence in the text as a whole. Now keep in mind that to understand the function of the sentence in the text as a whole, you may need to read more than just this sentence. However, it's not a bad idea to begin by reading this particular sentence. So let's try that now. The landscape outspread below her seemed an enlargement of her present mood, and she found something of herself in its calmness, its breadth, and its long free reaches. Now student me, you picked answer A, but that was wrong, so can you tell us a little bit more about your process?
Well, it seemed like the sentence was about the landscape, so that was my prediction. And in answer A, it says the physical setting. Isn't that the same as the landscape?
Well, yes, but you were so focused on the last part of the answer choice that you forgot the first part. You see, it is true that the landscape may be the physical setting of the scene, but does this sentence create a detailed image of it? In fact, it doesn't describe the setting at all. It simply tells us that it is somehow an extension of this person's mood. And so we are looking for an answer that shows that. And because answer A doesn't show that, we can cross it off. You see what I mean? When we carefully scrutinize all of an answer choice, instead of just focusing on one part of it, it's more apparent what makes it wrong. And if we did this, we would be more likely to eventually arrive at the correct answer, D. Now D is one that we might miss at first because it doesn't use any of the key words that we were expecting, like landscape or emotions. But if you look at the sentence before does tell us about her mood and the landscape. And so this sentence is, in fact, an extension or illustration of that sentence. Now let's move on to hack number 5. Avoid answers that use extreme language. In a way, this is building on hack number 4, because one of the things that tends to make an answer choice wrong is extreme language. I'm talking about words like best, worst, most, least, always, never. When you see a word like that in an answer choice, it's probably wrong. And that's why you want to avoid answers that use those words.
Mr. Greenberg, are you saying that extreme answers are always wrong? Isn't that kind of extreme?
That's a fair point, student me. Sometimes an answer that uses extreme language will be correct, but there needs to be extreme evidence to justify it, and usually there won't be. To demonstrate this hack, let's take a look at another example question that student me got wrong. Now this question is asking us for something that's true about mother, and since most of this passage is about mother, the correct answer could really come from anywhere in the text. Now student me, you picked D, but that was wrong, so can you tell me a little bit more about the process that you used to get that answer?
Well, it does say that she likes reading to her children.
Well, not exactly. It tells us that she does read to her children, and I guess it kind of implies that she enjoys it, but that's not what answer D says. Answer D says that reading to her children is her favorite activity. And that's pretty extreme because it implies that she likes it more than any other activity in the world. And there is certainly no evidence in the text to justify that choice. So if you're watching out for extreme language, you'd be able to quickly eliminate answer choice D, and B for that matter, and quickly establish that the correct answer is in fact C. So let's move on to our final hack. Hack number 6. You don't have to answer the questions in order. Now the rationale for this one is simple. All of the questions on the test are going to be worth the same number of points, but they're not all the same level of difficulty. So rather than forcing yourself to get through them in order, don't be afraid to skip a question that looks hard, and to try to tackle the easier questions first. There are a number of reasons why you should do this. One is because of time. Imagine that you are not able to answer all of the questions correctly in the time that you have. Which questions would you rather answer? The easy ones or the hard ones? Obviously, it's better to answer the easy ones because you're more likely to get those right. But even if you are able to finish the entire test in the time that you are given, it still can pay to answer the easier questions first, because by doing so, you are going to build confidence. Nothing is worse than starting off with a question that seems really hard. It's discouraging and can cause you to panic, which can actually decrease your performance on the test. So there you have it. I'm not saying that reading is going to be easy now. In fact, many students still struggle on reading due to issues like vocab. I'm going to make another video on that topic soon. But what I can say is that if you approach the test with these simple strategies, which anybody should be able to implement, you can dramatically increase your chances of maximizing your performance on the reading section of the test. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching and good luck on the test.